Hi, Anders, welcome. Congratulations on the two films that you have in the festival this year, The Worst Person in the World and Bergman Island. We will talk about those a little bit later on in the session. Both of the films have already been screened, so there may be people in the audience who've already seen them. They will be screening again after today, so do catch up with them if you can. Just to sort of start at the beginning with you, you made your initial film debut when you were 10, 11 years old in 1990, and it was a lead role in the family film Herman. You didn't plan to continue in acting, not because of any bad experience, but just that was your idea. But 16 years later, you got dragged back in by Norwegian director Joachim. You've made 3 films with Joachim. You've worked with many different directors in different countries and in different languages. You are also a bit of a polymath. You are a trained medical doctor. You work in a GP practice. You've released an album, and you've written a non-fiction book as well. Interesting areas which I think feed into your experience as an actor, and we will touch on those later. But then thinking specifically about your acting work and looking at IMDb, you've worked in a myriad of genres. I think you've acted in 17 feature films, a TV movie, 2 short films, and 5 TV or streaming series as well, which for somebody who says that they're a part-time actor, that's actually quite a big resume, and you know, certainly gives us plenty to talk about today. We're going to talk thematically across all of your career, but I did want to start at the beginning with your first film, Herman. And before we talk about that, I wonder if we can just show the clip. If I give a bit of background to the story, because I don't know whether people in the audience have seen it before. You play a young boy who inexplicably starts to lose his hair, and it's a metaphorical as well as a real journey that he goes on. And the clip that we are about to show is towards the end of the film, when Herman has got to a point of resolution with what's happening with himself and his family. So I wonder if we could play clip 1.
Looks like a Pasolini movie.
I think as well, it's probably a long time since you saw it as well, am I right?
At least 10 years.
Yeah. And you said it was quite a long shoot. You were 10 when you started, 11 when the film finished. And I read that you won Best Young Performer in a foreign film at the American Young Artist Awards for that role in 1992. That is now actually the youth branch of the Academy. So in a way, to extrapolate, it's a bit like a youth Oscar that you got for that role, which is quite remarkable, with that being your first role as well. And I think, you know, it obviously that role made quite an impact on Norway. It obviously made quite an impact in your life as well. And when I was doing some research, you very kindly put me in touch with Herman's director, Erik Gustafsson. And he said something which I thought was really quite poignant, that he said Anna's made an indelible imprint on the whole of the generation here in Norway. And I think partly because of the way that you delivered the role, but also because there was international recognition for the film and your role. It had a much greater impact than perhaps you would have known or even realised at the age of 10. So how did that role come about? How come you agreed to do it?
Well, it started with my mother being an actress, and she had worked with Erik on his one of his first feature films, and he was looking for a boy that age for this role, and my mother asked me if I wanted to try an audition, I don't think I really knew what I signed up for there.
Had you done drama at school?
A little bit.
Were you
but
doing
not so
drama
much.
out of school classes?
No, not at all.
Anything like, wow,
no,
okay.
I was a shy child. I was an introvert. I wanted to play with musical instruments. I wanted to be on my own by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, this character was also a little bit weird, not exactly Asperger or autism spectrum. He was not that kind of character, but there was a streak of that in him. And maybe I was a bit like that too. So Erik saw something in me, but I remember when we did the auditions, it felt like just playing games. So when I was offered the role, I was terrified. Because I felt some kind of pressure. Now I have to deliver something, and the character was so important for the film to work. So I was nervous and anxious, and the experience was okay. But I remember I told myself after the end of the shoot, you should never ever do this again. So I had mixed feelings about it, and it stayed like that.
Yeah.
I never planned to pursue an acting career. That happened by coincidence.
Yes, I mean, in some ways you're a kind of accidental actor, and there's been happy accidents that have happened along the way, and we'll move on to talking about how you first got back into acting as an adult. But one of the sort of almost impossibly glamorous things that happened to you was when you had a film, Oslo, August the 31st, in Cannes, in Uncertain Regard. Kate Blanchett was, I think she was the head of the competition jury that year. She saw your film. She thought your performance was so extraordinary that she asked her agent to represent you. The film was really, really respected in France, and all of a sudden doors opened for you in France as well. I mean, it's amazing enough for a film to go to Cannes, but how did you cope with all of that?
Well, I had mixed feelings about that too. But that was because I had already chosen a totally different path for my life. I had completed my medical studies, and I was supposed to start my internship. So my plan was to do that film with Joachim, and then I was going to wrap up my acting career for good. That was
in 2011. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, we did that shoot in the fall of 2010.
Yeah.
So I thought that, okay, this is a nice way to end this. And so I started my internship. And then I saw that things started to happen with that film. And that was incredibly fun, but I was confused because it was not the path that I had chosen. And it feels like this acting sidetrack is constantly coming back at me.
Yes.
And I just have to deal with it. It's a luxury problem, obviously.
Yeah.
And I would never recommend anybody else trying to both work as a doctor and as an actor. But it's been meaningful too, because I feel that throughout the years, I guess I tried to carve out a little niche for myself where I can do play characters and work with roles where my medical training and my background as a doctor is relevant. Yeah, because I've met many people in difficult situations and often extreme emotional situations, it feels like that experience and that background can be relevant, that I can provide something in my acting work, and sometimes it feels like acting is a way of reflecting on some of those experiences that I've had as a doctor.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, because you are very choosy about the roles that you take, you're definitely not an actor for hire. It seems to me that there has to be something meaningful in that role for you personally, or some way into that role that you feel that you've got uniquely because of the background that you bring to it. You know, you don't have formal training as an actor. You have formal medical training, and it's very interesting to hear you say that that does infuse your preparation for the roles, certainly. You're fluent in English as well, which makes a difference. You're also fluent in French.
Yeah, my French is not so bad.
It's very, I mean, obviously I said about the Cannes experience, that in a way that kind of opened a lot of doors for you in France. And one of the films that you made with French director Olivier Assayas, Personal Shopper, I've always found very intriguing. It is set in Paris, but the lead is Kristen Stewart. She's an American actress. You have a small but pivotal role in that film. I think I'm right that you're American and American living in Paris. Is that correct?
I don't believe that the film actually specifies
your
that.
name. The character is called Erwin.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a very interesting combination because it's a French director setting the film in France. He wrote it, but it's quite a universal but curious theme. For those of you who haven't seen Personal Shopper, we are going to show a clip in a moment. Kristen Stewart plays Maureen, who is one of a pair of twins, and her brother Lewis has died. They both have they're both almost like mediums. They have a way into the spirit world, and she is in Paris where her brother dies, and she's trying to find some peace. And the scene that we're going to have a look at in a moment, you play Erwin, who was her brother's, I think you were one of her brother's friends, but you have started a relationship with her dead brother's partner.
Yeah.
And she has come to stay at the house where you are living now with the new partner. So I wonder if we could have a look at clip 2 from Personal Shopper, and then I'll ask you a couple of questions afterwards. Thanks. It's such a beautiful scene. For you, the accidental actor, how did it feel when you knew that you were going to be acting against Kristen Stewart? You know, at this point in her career, she'd got all of Twilight behind her and is quite a big name. But she was also looking to diversify and do something different. Were you intimidated, or were you hungry for what you could learn from her? Or were you kind of, I don't know, was it not even part of your method to be aware of Kristen Stewart, the actress?
No, I wasn't particularly intimidated by her because she's a great actress, and we share many. We have the same acting style.
Yes.
So I felt perfectly at ease with her, and Olivier is the sweetest guy on earth working with. So it's more what you get intimidated by is the fact that you are a day player, that you have one scene and you fly to Prague and you don't know anyone. So I mean, if you do a bigger role or if you do a lead, you get into the groove, and I always spend 1 or 2 weeks before I feel that I'm really up to speed. So it's hard to only do one scene because you're not really in the groove yet. But yeah, she was amazing to work with. I would love to work with her again.
And when you came on set, how long had they been in production for before you?
They were very close to the end.
Right.
You can see that she's really exhausted, and it was a tough shoot for everybody. I think. So they were, and I came with the fresh energy and really wanted to make a good scene. I felt that character could be some kind of that could be some kind of a therapy session.
Definitely.
For her character. So I tried to draw from my experience as a doctor, because this was a person that nobody knew. He just came in from nowhere, so the character wasn't established, and but I felt that I could probably create a character through the quasi therapy session.
Yes, because it is very much like a key that unlocks something in Kristin's character, Maureen, that brings some level of closure for her. And it is, you're right, it's quite a complex film. For those who haven't seen Personal Shopper, a lot of the film, Kristen Stewart's character, Maureen, feels like she's being haunted, or perhaps her brother is trying to reach out to her, but there's also the suggestion that there's something quite malevolent going on as well, and there's many different narrative threads running through it. I imagine the script itself was quite complex, but one of the interesting things that you said about it, about the film, was when you saw it, it was absolutely how you imagined it would be. It wasn't surprising. It was the film that you had read on the script.
Yeah, that's true. And I felt, I think Olivier won Best Director at Cannes that year.
Yes, I think so.
Which I felt was a very deserved prize, because it's a very hard film to make. And I remember reading the script and thinking, this is you're throwing up a lot of balls in the air, and is this gonna come together in any way? So I imagine this must be a very hard film to make, to get a sense that there is some kind of cohesive structure to it. I think he succeeded, but it's a complex film for sure.
I mean, have you ever been in the situation where, when you actually see a film that you've participated in for the first time, it is really so different to how you would have imagined it?
Not really. Or I've had maybe a couple of examples where the result was, the mood was very different. Or there have been many examples where I wasn't satisfied with my own performance, but that's my problem. No, I think that usually I'm able to get a sense of how the movie or the TV series is going to be, so that's how I try to stay selective. Also, I try to pick the projects that interest me on the script level. I always get worried when people are starting up a production without really having, where the script is still a work in progress.
Yes.
I don't like that.
And you have the benefit of being able to choose as well. So I think, perhaps that is one of the levels at which you have an ownership of the project. And also, several of the characters that you have played have been written specifically for you as well.
Yeah, at least one, Oslo, August 31st. Yeah. And that was a project where the script was a work in progress.
Really?
Because the film happened very quickly, because Joachim was supposed to do Louder Than Bombs, his American film, and it was pushed because of several things. And then he got an idea to make a film in Norway really, really fast, based on, or loosely based on the novel that inspired Louis Malle to make The Fire Within, a French film from the early 60s. But the reason why that was possible was that we already had the framework we already had a synoptic sense of the film, and we knew what the character was going to be like. So we could just add the dialogue.
Yes.
Which is probably what you always should do. Add dialogue in the end.
Yes, I mean, and your acting career is very much inextricably linked with the Norwegian writer-director Joachim Trier. You have acted in 3 of his films. First of all, Reprise in 2006, Oslo, August the 31st in 2011, and then The Worst Person in the World, 2021, which we're screening here in the festival. And one of the interesting things about your collaboration is that he was the director that pulled you back into acting in 2006 when he wanted you to read the script for Reprise. You spoke before about, sort of going away and thinking about it. And I wondered why it was you that he gave that script to. Had he seen Herman? Did he know your mum? Why out of all of the possible actors or people who had got a talent for acting, why was it you that he wanted to read?
That's a question for him, but he saw a lot of actors for that role, and he also wanted to try people who did not have any acting experience. He was very heavily inspired by Bresson.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think he wanted someone who didn't feel like an actor.
Right.
But who at the same time had enough skills to be able to pull it off, because it's hard to take someone, some ordinary person from the streets and ask them to just play themselves in front of a camera. Most people will be very awkward in that situation. But then you don't want an actor with too many actorly gestures and all the habits that we develop over the years. So so he tried musicians and people with completely different backgrounds, and then he found me, I think, in some archive because I had been in one film as a child.
Right.
But I had 10 callbacks or something like that. So it was a very hard process to finally land that role, and I had to push my last year of med school because of that film. But that's what restarted my career. I had absolutely no plans of doing any acting again. It was just something about that script that fascinated me.
And did you always plan to work with Joachim again? Did you, after you'd finished Reprise, did you say this was such a great collaboration? What can we do next?
I would have loved to work with him again, but I thought that must be some kind in the future. Sometime in the future. I had never. We didn't really plan to make our own Antoine Doinel project or anything like that. Or so I was very surprised when he called me to and asked me if I wanted to do Oslo August 31st.
And am I right that he actually wrote the character of Anders in Oslo August the 31st for you?
He says
was there an idea, and then did he give the idea the name Anders, or was it always Anders?
I don't think we've never been so concerned about the names there. Renate, who plays the lead in The Worst Person in the World, has a small part in Oslo, and her name is Renate.
Yeah.
But I mean, the characters had to have some names, and we just picked those names.
It's difficult.
It wasn't supposed to be some kind of. It wasn't supposed to resonate with reality or anything like that. Actually, that character is very far from me. I don't have. He's darker and more depressed. Yes. Obviously. Yeah.
Well, we actually have a clip from Oslo, August the 31st, and in that film you do play a character called Anders, who's a recovering drug addict, and he's been given day release from the facility where he's receiving treatment, and the film takes place over those 24 hours. He's got a job interview, but in a way that seems like an excuse for him to come out and to come back into Oslo and reconnect with friends, and also face some of the demons that you imagine that character has been dealing with, that have caused him to become the addict that he is. So why don't we take a look at clip 3 from Oslo, August the 31st. Thank you. How does it make you feel when you watch that clip again?
It's the closest I've been to a method approach, I guess. Yeah, it was like a 40 days bubble of concentration. But also, I remember I struggled very hard to try to find some emotional dynamic to the character, because I was afraid that when you follow one character for one day and he's depressed and suicidal, it can be boring or depressing to watch him. So I wanted there to be nuance. I wanted there to be variation, but still I wanted to give the audience a sense of repressed anger and something that was boiling underneath. You know, the English title of the French film is The Fire Within.
Yes.
So that was sort of my guiding star for that character. I wanted there to be an underlying pressure. Yeah.
But it's very intense, and it does take a toll on you personally. And one of the things that you've said when we've talked about your attitude to acting is that you want new places to go and you want new challenges. And I think it's very difficult when you have a performance as strong as this for directors not to typecast you, because they tend to be very affected by what they've seen, and they think, well, Anders Danielsen Lie is very good at psychologically nuanced, darker characters. That's the character that I'm writing, and I want him to do it. And one of the things that I found fascinating is that you've said you've always wanted to do more comedy.
Yeah, and you know, the worst person in the world was supposed to be that film, but it's and so it's a dark romantic comedy, and the darkness is obviously my job to provide the darkness as usual. No, it's true. I would love to do lighter, funnier material for many reasons. I want to expand my you know, my territory a little bit, and not always not always be typecast, but also because you know, the problem with film acting is that it requires emotions to be very naturalistic and sometimes real in order for them to work, unless it's a Pasolini movie, for example. I mean, you have to either it's really stylized, and that can be interesting, but the movies that I made with Joachim are really close to real life and close to contemporary real life.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you have to invest yourself emotionally, because if you don't do that, the scene won't work. And that can be draining. So, and I can't really get away from myself. It's I have a number of ways in which I can be emotional and depressed, but yeah. So I would love to get a little bit away from that, even though I'm proud of what I've done with Joachim, obviously.
We have a clip from The Worst Person in the World, actually, and it is, although you are still being your character is still being a bit precious in it, there is something a bit more physically light and playful in it. The Worst Person in the World, for those of you who haven't seen it, is about a character called Julie. She's a sort of 20, 30-something-year-old young woman, and she begins a relationship with Anna's character, Axel, who is at least 10 years older than her. I think he's about 43. And in the clip that we're going to look at, Julie's just moving into his apartment and trying to negotiate her space in the established space of your home. So let's have a look at clip 4, please. That's a lovely clip. It's really nice. I love the way that you are together physically as well. And when we were talking before, you said that most of that scene was improvised. So both physically and in terms of what you say as well, was it all more or less improvised?
I think so. The problem here was that we had long breakup scenes. We had long scenes at the end of the film that are really you know, serious scenes. And but it's important for the audience to get to see the couple, to see their happy moments, to see their blissful moments, because that's an investment that you make in the film, and you get the payoff for that when they leave each other or when they can't be together anymore. You have to have seen them happy. And we didn't have that much screen time to do that.
No.
So those moments would have to be very specific, and they would have to be give the audience a sense of a real romantic relationship. We used improvisation a lot to try to create those moments, but we also had scripted scenes, and that's a way I've been working a lot with Joachim, that we try to paraphrase scripted dialogue. We are extremely well prepared, but sometimes it can be nice to riff on that, or improvise over some chord changes that we already know.
And did you know Renata? She has a small, who plays Julie, she has a small role in Oslo, August the 31st. But
yeah, she has one line.
Yes.
Let's go to the party.
Very, very, very small role.
She was with us for 9 days because it was a party sequence, and it was shot on so many locations. So
that was 2010.
Yeah.
And then this was this shot in 2020.
Yeah.
This film. So 10 years later,
Yes.
had you been in touch with her?
Yeah.
Is she somebody that you know because you both live in Oslo?
Absolutely, and I remember Joachim and I talked about that during the shoot of Oslo, that there's something about Renate.
Right.
She has something special, and she was just so much fun to work with. And she had this very charming energy.
Yeah.
So I think I even said to Joachim, I want her to play in one of your movies in the future, and I can be someone.
Yeah.
have a smaller role, but.
And that role was written specifically for her as well.
The worst person in the world, absolutely.
So you absolutely had a hand in that too. And, you know, I mean, I'm sure she was very interesting to learn from, because she is quite physically comic in the way that she acts as well. And, you know, there's an energy that comes from that as well. And it's very palpable, the dynamic chemistry that there is between you two. So I'm wondering if this was a happier experience making that film, although for those who haven't seen it, I don't want to have spoilers. There is quite a bit of sadness also.
Yeah, for me it was the usual routine.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, actually the shoot was a very happy shoot.
Yeah.
It was a great energy during the shoot of that film, and even when we did the harder parts of it. But we had a great team, a great crew, and I felt that the material was good. That it was a very solid script, and it's not always so hard to do sad scenes if you feel that there's meaning and dramaturgy and narrative energy in the material. Then it's almost as if the scene drags you through the route. And sometimes when I act, I get a feeling that the scene knows where you're going. But I don't know yet. It's when you shoot the scene on the day, on the set. That's when you really discover what direction to follow.
So it's almost like a crucible, that, you know, the inspiration.
Yeah, there's some kind of internal logic in the scene. I met a Norwegian writer yesterday whose name is Carlo Knausgård, who's extremely famous, and I met him for the first time yesterday. I was really starstruck, and he said the same thing about when he's writing, he has to write a lot, and then all of a sudden it's almost as if the writing takes over. It's like the pen takes over and tells him what to do, and it feels a little bit the same way when you work with good material. Because you prepare a lot, and you have done everything you can, but at the end of the day, it's the scene itself who really tells you what to do.
Yes, and when you've talked about your approach to acting, you've said in your other professional life you're very analytical and there's a certain amount of control in what you're doing, but when you're acting, you often just don't know what's happening. You're sort of there in the moment.
That's true. Sometimes I compare it to, or I compare the actor-director relationship to a child-parent relationship. In the sense that I'm the child.
Yes.
I'm fooling around, playing, and I'm falling and hurting myself, and I need someone to watch over me, and to watch me in the literal sense of that word. I need to be seen and taken care of. My job is to search for something I don't really know what it is, because that's the creativity of acting and filmmaking. Sometimes to be open for something. For the unknown.
For the unknown. And is that also the case when you're playing a real person? You played Anders Behring Breivik in Paul Greengrass's 22nd of July, about the far-right terrorist who murdered, I think, 77 people on the island of Utøya. For you, playing a real-life person, is that different, or is it the same process for you?
It's different, but the thing about that part was that we had to ask ourselves the question: why do we want to portray that character in a fiction, in a feature film at all?
Yes.
That was the big question, and the answer to that question for me was that we could let him represent right-wing terrorism more than trying to copy him or emulate him, because that would almost feel as if you're like you're paying him some kind of tribute by trying to be as him. So that wasn't the what we were aiming for at all. And in that film, I see the Breivik character more as a generic right-wing terrorist. And the character in the film is not the exact same as Breivik. There are some slight fictionalizing to that character.
Yeah, and it must be a challenge, because on the one hand, there is no desire to make that character or what that type of character stands for sympathetic, but you also don't want to make it so monstrous that people watching the film can't understand why that person exists, and they don't actually believe it because it's so monstrous.
For me, it was very important to try to challenge. There are so many myths about evil, and I think we want a person like that to not be one of us, to not be human at all. We tend to look at him as a monster because that's easier for us to understand. It's much harder to think that a human being can be able to do it.
Yeah.
And what I discovered through watching many hours of interrogation footage is that he was frighteningly normal. He had so many. He was polite. He was pretty nice with the interrogators, and it was really, really creepy to watch his to watch him as a human being.
Yeah.
Just so that's that was important for me to try to put some of that into the character.
And interesting as well that it was Paul Greengrass that directed it, the British director, who has quite a lot of experience in documentary, and brings a lot of that to July the 22nd as well. So in the way that he films and also the way that he works with you on set, which is very different. And, as I mentioned earlier when we were sort of talking about where your career has gone, you have worked with lots of very different directors, some of Europe's finest contemporary directors. You've worked with them as well. And I wanted to talk about your work with Mia Hansen-Løve, whose film Bergman Island we're screening in the festival as well. I'm not quite sure how you came to work with her. She was formerly the partner of Olivier Assayas. How did you fall into Mia's world, or how did Mia fall into yours?
Well, I had seen all of her films, and I think she had seen me in Joachim's films, and she contacted me and offered me the part without any audition or anything. So I was very surprised and happy about that. I think I maybe even said yes before having read the script, because I was such a fan of her. And but the script was very good. I really liked the idea of because it's a film about filmmaking.
Yes.
In many ways it is, and it pays tribute to Ingmar Bergman in a thematic way. But it can't really be compared to a Bergman movie. It's a very personal movie for Mia, about relationships, but also how blurry the lines are between fiction and reality.
Yes.
And we live our lives in the present, hopefully.
Yeah.
And but we don't really understand our lives in the present. We create stories about our lives afterwards, in the past.
Yes.
That's really how we try to get our lives meaningful, is to try to create stories about what we have already experienced, and and then we are fictionalizing.
Yes.
Because we tell stories, and for Bergman, I don't think there were no borders between fiction and reality.
No.
At all.
No.
I think he was constantly putting his own life into his films, and it went back and forth. And that's for me the biggest theme in Bergman Island, is that when you are a filmmaker and you want to tell something about life itself, or the human experience, you are forced to use yourself.
Yes.
You're forced to draw from your own life up to a point where you don't really know what's fiction and reality anymore.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that I find extremely fascinating by with working as an actor. When we made Reprise, it felt like we were making a documentary, because I felt that film was about my own life.
Yeah.
And because of that film, I met my wife. And it has, that film changed my life. And my whole collaboration with Joachim has been a way of almost reflecting on life in film. And hopefully that can be meaningful to other people.
Yes, I think you're right, and the autobiography is always there, but it's how much of it you allow in, or how much a director or a writer allows to come in, and that's the beautiful dance, I think, that there is in filmmaking. We're going to take a look at a clip from Bergman Island. In Bergman Island, you played Joseph, And at this point, you're a character in the film within a film. It's about a female writer-director who goes to Bergman Island on a writing retreat. Mia Wasikowska plays Amy, who is a former partner, and you've both gone to Faroe Island, which is called Bergman Island, for a friend's wedding, and you've made an intimate reconnection with one another. So let's see clip 5, please. Thank you. Was it different working with a female writer, director?
No, I don't think gender is irrelevant to me. Some people speak of Mia as a feminine director, that there is some kind of feminine quality to her films, and I find that that's a stereotype.
Yes.
Her films are sophisticated and subtle, and you know, this film in particular visually reminds me of Eric Romer.
Yeah.
But that's not. Is that feminine to be sophisticated? Sometimes, but it's just a very stereotype thing to say, in my opinion.
Yes.
The thing about Mia is that she has a very well-planned mise-en-scène.
Yeah.
So that she knows exactly where she wants the camera to stand, and she has so it's really composed, and that can be challenging for an actor. But it also gives you some limitations.
Is there like a safety in that, if you know what the boundaries are?
Yeah, it can be absolutely. It's like the opposite of how Paul Greengrass likes to shoot, because he that his mise-en-scène is more about coverage.
Yeah.
So you let things happen, and then it's all about trying to cover it from many angles.
It.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's just a lot of fun to be able to work in different ways. So yeah, no, it was amazing to work with Mia. It's the Fårö is a very special place, as you can see from the pictures. It has fantastic light, a fantastic landscape, and you also, if you watched Bergman films, you kind of feel the presence of a ghost.
Yes. Yeah.
In a good sense. I mean, Mia didn't try to copy a Bergman film or to emulate Bergman, but you feel like you are part of a tradition. You are at a very special place in film history. So it's just very inspiring. I don't think it's that hard to get out of the roles. I know that some actors feel that way. I can be very exhausted, especially after Oslo August 31st. I was really drained and exhausted. But I was also glad that the whole thing was over, because it wasn't a very comfortable shoot. And the group from Reprise, I think we had 3 weeks or something like that to create those friendships. We didn't really have much time, but we spent a lot of we were together constantly and partying and because we knew that those relations would be very important for the film. And I stay in contact with most of those guys regularly still. And I think that way of working, which is like, that is not acting. It's like the non-professionals approach to film acting. I think that's an important approach even for a very experienced professional film actor. To be able to do that sometimes is the difference between greatness and just a regular day at work. Renate, for example, who is a trained actor, Renate Reinsve, who plays in The Worst Person in the World, she has much more stage experience than I have. But when I watched her do this part, she approached the part primarily as a human being. So it's like the professional training doesn't really apply when you're supposed to do that kind of role. And that's why she's so great, in my opinion, is that she dares to be a person, a real person, and vulnerable. Yes, I've read all of Knausgård's books, and I wouldn't say that my struggle is particularly relevant to understand the 22nd of July or the character psychology of Anders Behring Breivik. I mean, it's an extremely complex work in terms of character, in any sense of that word, my struggle. But Anders Behring Breivik is still a bit of a puzzle to me. The most important source of research for me was actually interrogation footage. There was endless hours of filmed interrogations that the Norwegian police let me see. And of course the forensic reports and a lot of different stuff. But you know, when you have to balance all the documentation, all the real life documentation has to be balanced. We're making a feature film that is supposed to be 2 hours, something like that, and there will be a lot of limitations, and the character in the film will have limited screen time, and and we have a script as well. So my job there is to try to choose what is most important to show in those scenes. And I wanted to focus on the narcissism, because that's a very important personality trait, and also the complete lack of adequate emotional response to what he has done, which was absolutely shocking to watch in interrogation footage. I mean, the day after the attacks, he was sitting in a chair at the Norwegian police department, talking as I am now, being totally relaxed, and he had no emotional understanding of what he had done.
Thank you very much for being brave enough to come down and stand on the stage and ask those questions. We really appreciate it. I am sorry, but we have run out of time, so we do have to wrap things up now, Anders. There's a few thank yous that I want to make. First of all, I want to thank the Liberation Initiatives. They're one of our newest festival sponsors, and they're supporting this year's Screen Talks and a number of other programmes across the festival. They join with us in our continued efforts to make the LFF more inclusive to underrepresented communities. So we do really thank them for their support. But most of all, Anders, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us about your practice as an actor. You are a very true and a very nuanced actor, and it's really beautiful to hear you talk about your craft. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much, and thanks
Thank you.
for having me.
Thank you.